Welcome to JUICE, Creativity Support for Journalists. The aim of our JUICE project is to deliver and commercialise a new form of digital support for creative thinking for journalists in order to improve the novelty, value and productivity of their work during the early writing of news stories. Our initial JUICE concept was generated with funds from a 2015 Google Computational Journalism Research Award in Europe, made to City University London. The university used these funds to develop an initial concept which is delivered as a Google add-on sidebar, which you can see on the right side of the screen. Journalists who use the JUICE prototype are simply able to work within Google Docs developing a new story and to use the add-on feature as needed in order to invoke it or not. So for example, if the journalist no longer needs the creativity support, they can ignore the sidebar or simply close it. And then to invoke the creativity support during writing of the story, they simply choose the add-on and click Start again. And as you can see, the sidebar appears on the right-hand side of the story. In this very short video, we're just going to demonstrate some initial features of JUICE and how it can support early development of news stories. Let's imagine our journalist is interested in developing a story about the earthquake that happened on Mount Everest earlier this year, but try and take a unique human angle on the story. First of all, the journalist can highlight any portion of text in the story and have it imported into the sidebar by clicking this Insert button. You will notice that the app has interpreted and generated a set of search terms that it will use during creative searches of different news sources. These creative searches don't necessarily find the most similar content, but content that is similar enough to provoke creative thought. In order to use this content, the journalist can then choose between a number of different creative search strategies that enable him or her to explore different creative angles on the story. As we've said here, we're going to explore a human angle by selecting this individual strategy called individuals. The user can parameterize how far back in news stories they want to go and how broad or narrow they want to search. And then when they're ready, they simply press the search button. JUICE then interacts with different news sources for containing digital news in order to retrieve content. However, unlike existing search tools such as Google, because if we're interested in taking individual stories, the algorithms behind the app extract information about relevant individuals to that story. As you can see here, I can search up and down the sidebar to look at the highlighted people and then the stories that relate to them. The user can ask for the engine to search again to retrieve other people or highlight other names in different orders. Interestingly, in this search, one notices that the first name that comes up is David Beckham. David Beckham is not someone you would necessarily associate directly with Mount Everest and the earthquake, but by clicking on the story, David Beckham plays football with children affected by the devastating Nepal earthquake, we can see some information about the story, which is when the footballer played football with Nepalese children as part of charity work related to the disaster. And if necessary, the user can then follow up the original source of the story, which in this case is a Daily Mirror news article. Obviously, it's possible to take some of this content from our original story and then copy it into our Google Docs as an aide-memoire for future ideas that we might to develop in the story. Returning to the sidebar, we can also see other names that are here. For example, Samina Baig, who was the first Pakistani woman to summit Everest and used her story to encourage other women to climb their own mountains. The journalist might use this inspiration to think about the role of women in the earthquake and how they suffered, and how they might have been part of the rescue efforts. Likewise, we can take sort of interesting information about film directors, the work of Prince Harry, and even at the bottom here we can see the tool is generating other generic human angles. Think about other artists, rock stars and designers who might have an angle on the story. Juice has been designed to provide very simple, accessible, creative guidance based on the expert strategies of journalists in establishing creative angles on stories. We'll be developing more of the tool over the next 6 months, implementing all of these different creative angle stories.